Welcome back to another episode from Of Sound Mind and Spirit. This is Lisa.
And this is Shelly.
And Shelly, today I am really kind of excited because we have another guest with us. And
Yay!
she is a friend, not only of us personally, but she's a friend of the podcast. And she is here to talk to us about a topic that is near and dear to us and is really very important, I think, to all people, but specifically, I think, to women in our hearts. So with that, Shelly, would you like to welcome Maria?
Absolutely. Y'all, welcome to Maria Gallagher. She serves as the executive director of the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation. It's an affiliate of the National Right to Life. She is also an author, very accomplished, an advocate, a trained life coach, the mother of a beautiful ballerina, and she serves as a mentor to many. Hello, Maria.
Hello, Lisa and Shelly. I am so thrilled to be with you today. As you know, I am a fangirl of the show. I just love it. I love it. I love it. I think you two do such a fabulous job. And it's just such an honor to be with you today.
Oh, well, thank you very
You're
much.
too sweet. I think you were our first audio response. You left us a voicemail and we played it. And so listeners have heard your voice, I think, twice now, because also with the Lent episode that you had a response there too. So now we get to have you in person.
Yeah, it's so much better to see you via this wonderful technology and to catch your energy, which is always phenomenal.
Thank you. So, Maria, I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about the position that you hold with the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation. And specifically, how did you become involved in the pro-life movement?
Well, it's an interesting story how I became involved in the pro-life movement. Right now, I am the executive director of the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation, which is the Keystone State affiliate of National Right to Life. And we have tens of thousands of members throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and nearly 40 local county-based chapters that are involved in education and grassroots action. And we shine a spotlight on the most vulnerable individuals from the moment of conception to the instant of natural death. I came into the pro-life movement in an interesting way. I was actually in seventh grade, and I had started a new school. I had been in a public school that had a lot of problems, and I had a lot of problems in gym class. I was a terrible athlete. And one day I went to gym class and I was trying to do tumbling and I didn't stretch out ahead of time. And I hurt my neck to the point where I couldn't move my head back and forth. It was very uncomfortable. And I told my mother, I am not going back to that school. And she was beside herself because she had no idea where to place me. And so she did some research and she found a lay run Catholic school in Ohio. And at first they didn't want to take me because I was in seventh grade. And you know how seventh grade girls can be. And they wondered how I would work out. And we pleaded with the principal, please take me. And she did. And I fell in love with the school. It was a very traditional Catholic education that was offered there, and it was so beautiful. And I fell in love with the faith. And the principal of our school, who was also our teacher, took us down to the Ohio State House in Columbus, Ohio, and we had our own private demonstration against the 1973 U.S. Supreme Court ruling Roe versus Wade. This was my very first introduction to the pro-life movement. I had never heard of it before. I couldn't understand why there weren't many people there. I didn't understand that there was a whole big March for Life that went on in Washington, D.C. in or around January 22nd. So I was a real newbie, and I just was flabbergasted at the whole concept that someone would take the life of an innocent child in the womb. I could not understand that as a seventh grader. Now, I wish I could tell you that from that moment on, I was an active pro-life participant, but I was not. I went to a Catholic high school, but I do not recall abortion being mentioned except if there were whispers in the hall that a girl had had one. And so I then went on to college and I studied journalism. And unfortunately, we had what was called the Associated Press style book, which dictated what kind of words we could use in reference to the whole issue of abortion. And it dictated that you were not allowed to use the phrase pro life. And you could not use the phrase unborn baby or unborn child. You had to use the word fetus. And pretty soon I was indoctrinated in what I would call pro choice ideology. And I got to the point where I thought, well, if ever I ran for office, I would say that I pray every day for an end to abortion, but I'm personally pro choice. And it was around that time that I met someone who challenged me and my viewpoints. And he asked me, what are you doing for pro life? And by that time, I had graduated college. And I said, well, I'm doing nothing for pro life. I'm not allowed to as a journalist. And he questioned that and he started giving me pro life materials to read. And there was one book called Grand Illusion by George Grant. I'll never forget it. I also, on my own, decided to read The Gospel of Life by Pope St. John Paul II. And my eyes were opened to the truth about life and about the cause of life. And I felt as if I had to become involved. So at first, I became involved in my local parish pro life group, praying the rosary. And then I graduated to becoming the head of a pro life group at a church. And then I went on to work as a legislative associate at Ohio Right to Life. And then a job opened up at the Pennsylvania Pro Life Federation for an education director. I decided to pack up a U-Haul trailer and cross the border from Ohio into Pennsylvania, at which point I had a flat tire on the trailer. And I wondered, what in the world am I doing? I'm leaving my parents, my sister, my friends, my whole support network. I'm going to a place and I only know the people who are in this little building. They're in a basement office underneath a Kinko's. What in the world am I doing here?
What an amazing route, though,
Yes,
I mean, when you, I'm going back just a little bit, but when
yeah.
you graduated and went into journalism, and I'm thinking
Mhm.
that sounds like a lot of us. I think the way you phrased that if someone asked me, I'd say, "Oh, I'm praying for an end to abortion," but you kind of want to lean towards that.
Mhm.
I wouldn't put my beliefs on someone else. That's a common
Mhm.
phrase that people
Mhm.
say, right?
Mhm.
But that once you got challenged, you
Yeah,
Yeah.
reoriented your whole life. I mean,
I did.
that's what I'm hearing you say is I left
It
everything behind and I
I
followed
did.
Christ.
I did. It was mind blowing, and I really feel as if I had the calling to the pro life movement when I was in seventh grade, when I went to that demonstration, but I didn't understand it at the time. I knew that it was an important event. It was very significant in my life, but I had dreams of becoming an actress. I wanted to be on Broadway. Thought that at some point I would do journalism, but I was really focused on the theater. And everybody was quite surprised when I ended up studying journalism in college because they thought that I was Broadway bound. And I said, no, I want a stable job. And so went into journalism and just became overpowered by journalism. And that became my whole life. It really became an idol in my life, quite frankly. It took somebody with a good understanding of pro life mentality to really shake things up for me and to say, what are you personally doing? And that's a question that I ask people now. What are you personally doing? Because I think everybody has a role to play and a talent to give in the pro life movement.
When Lisa and I first started writing, it was 2009, and we signed up for the 40 Days for Life here in Texas
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
followed quite closely. We didn't realize it was going to be such a big thing at the time, but that's the year that Abby Johnson left Planned Parenthood and got involved. And to come full circle, my daughter actually worked for 40 Days for Life when she was in college.
Yeah. And in fact, in the early days of Sound Mind and Spirit, we wrote a lot. We were very, very active, very vocal on the pro-life movement. And Shelly and I just were talking about that, how, I don't know why, I don't know how it happened, but we kind of got quieter about it. It's not been the top of our, I'll say, topic list or discussions or, any of that. And so that was one of the, reasons for having you come back on is now it's become a topic again. I hate to say it like that because it's always a topic, but I
Right.
feel like the Supreme Court decision last year really brought it up again to the forefront of people's minds, the news, everything. And things have changed, but maybe not always in the way people think they have. So that's one of my questions for you really is, what's the fight? What's the, where do we stand? I know every state is different, but just a
Yes,
general landscape of what does it look like? What is the movement focusing on right now?
certainly. When the Roe versus Wade decision was overturned by Dobbs in 2022, it was the fulfillment of a dream for many of us.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a glorious day. And I was actually at the National Right to Life convention that day. And I was surprised that I started tearing up when I heard the news. And a lot of the other people there were crying as well. And they were tears of joy, but it had been quite a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It had been going on for nearly 50 years. And some of the people at that convention were there from the start. And so I don't want to take anything away from that victory. Now, we have a situation where the issue of abortion went back to the individual states so that people could decide. And it's interesting that there are some states that have so many protections now for preborn children and their mothers. And that's so gratifying and so encouraging. And there are so many states that have programs available for pregnant women facing difficult circumstances. There are a number of municipalities that offer pregnancy resource centers, which provide a host of services and items for pregnant women, everything from diapers to daycare referrals, and from maternity clothes to mentoring. So we have a vast number of resources available, and no pregnant woman should feel as if she's going it alone.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have a situation where research indicates that as many as 60% of abortions are coerced, meaning women are being pressured by boyfriends, husbands, parents, even grandparents to abort their children. And I just spoke yesterday with a woman who was coerced into having 3 abortions. And the loss and devastation in her life were monumental. But she ended up escaping an abusive relationship where 2 of the abortions had taken place. And she found freedom and she found hope. And she's actually now running a pregnancy center. And
Oh,
she's become a
wow.
speaker on pro life. And she's become an author and she's sharing her experiences around the world. So there are those success stories. And really, every time a pregnant woman chooses life, that is a wonderful success story. And that is a miracle. And
Mm-hmm.
we should never lose sight of that. Now, given that, it's also true that we have challenges that we face. We had a number of ballot initiatives in many states. And unfortunately, the other side has a great deal of money and they put forward falsehoods about the whole issue of abortion. And they scare people, quite
Mm-hmm.
frankly. They scare a lot of women in particular. You can't make a good decision if you're scared.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are in need of a time of great education in the pro life movement. This is a new era. And we can reach people in so many ways through podcasts, through social media, through email newsletters, through all sorts of avenues, all sorts of platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to use that. I mean, just posting an ultrasound picture of a baby can be a remarkable tool in helping to promote life. I mean, just helping out at a pregnancy center, folding clothes, baby clothes, donating to a pregnancy center, sponsoring a rosary walk at your local parish. I mean, there are so many activities that can be done to promote the cause of life and to give a good face to the pro-life movement. We all need to feel as if we're ambassadors for life and champions for life.
I like
I
those
love
titles.
that. Yeah, I love that. And that was going to be one of my questions is how do we individually help? And you just gave the list and it's longer than what I was even thinking in my head. And I love that because no matter where you live, your circumstances in life, almost anything, though you have a suggestion for anyone.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that it all begins with a personal assessment. You need to determine what are your talents and gifts. And a lot of us struggle with that. And there are actually tests that you can take to help you to understand what your gifts are and use those gifts to promote life in any way you can. I mean, I know a woman who was a great artist and she made this beautiful sculpture of a child in a big hand, and the hand represented God, the palm of God's hand. I mean, that was a tremendous witness for life, something I could never do. I know people who are good at knitting, and so they knit caps for newborns.
Oh.
And that's a very sweet thing to do. And if you see sometimes on the news, they'll profile, well, this hospital dressed these babies in Valentine's Day clothes to mark Valentine's Day, or they put them in Steelers outfits because the Pittsburgh Steelers were in the news that day. There are so many things you can do, and we need to celebrate life, and we need to celebrate babies. A lot of people are just frankly scared of babies nowadays. And we need
Yes.
to share our experiences of motherhood and say, hey, it's okay. We realize you need support and encouragement and love, but you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
We need to empower women and let them understand that there may be challenges ahead. It's not going to be easy, but it's so worth it. I mean, the minute you see that baby after you've given birth, I mean, I was in labor for 36 hours. So I was waiting for a long time to see that baby.
Oh, no.
When I finally saw all 9 pounds, 1 ounce of her, I was like, yes, that is Gabriella. Gabriella Teresa. I
Oh my
recognize
goodness.
you anywhere. And it was just it's just an awe-inspiring moment. And my mother had often told me about that. She said, Maria, when I gave birth to you, it was just like I was handed this tremendous gift. And in her case, she was handed the gift by my father because she didn't get to the hospital in time. And my father delivered me in their 2-bedroom apartment.
Oh my.
It was a surprise.
A good surprise.
It was a good surprise, and it was a wonderful gift. And it took both of them to get me into the world, definitely. I just think that a lot of people just focus and obsess on all the problems that can happen. And certainly there are problems, and certainly there are challenges. And I don't mean to diminish those or minimize those, but what a gift.
Something that I realized with, I'll say the younger generation, with Shelly and I both have young adults.
Yes.
And Shelly has a teen. I guess one of mine is still a teen. And something that I've noticed with them is that they've grown up almost like the society, their culture, their generation has seen a lot of change and the unexpected, problems. I feel like they're not growing up with as much hope.
Right.
As previous generations.
Yes.
And so when you say that you people see all the problems, we need to show them just what the beautiful gift a baby is and that you can do it. There is support out there. There are people willing and available to help. and to uplift you and so many programs. I think that is important, especially as we raise this next generation to believe in the gift of babies and the pro-life movement, that they see those gifts and the hope that's out there. And that is something that we as mothers, everybody, we can inspire that in our children and how they see mothering,
Right.
and they see that what a gift they are to us even.
Right. And I think that it's very important if you're going to go into any kind of pro-life activity to have a strong basis of faith. Now, we know that you can be pro-life if you have faith or no faith at all, but many of us do have a foundation in Christ. And it is so powerful and so helpful to reach out to the Blessed Mother and to ask her to bless our efforts and to look to the Holy Spirit and ask, what is it you want me to do here? Because that's another challenge we face in the pro-life movement. People have all sorts of ideas. And sometimes we as an organization will launch a project and we'll get feedback about, hey, that's great, but I'm doing this or I'm doing that. And that's wonderful. But sometimes we need to come together as a team and work on projects. And it may be that God is trying to bring us together. I believe that we worship a God of unity and a brotherhood and sisterhood. And he wants us to be a family. And sometimes we have to pool our resources and pool our talents to get the job done. And we can't just be a lone wolf out there doing our own thing. We need to have a community-based approach to these issues. And I think that helps. And we also have to look within. Are we celebrating our own motherhood? Or do we go around with a frowny face all the time and talk about all of our difficulties and how stressed we are and how awful things are? I mean, it can be easy to fall into that trap. And don't get me wrong, there are some days when you wonder, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? But you have to do things with a smile on your face, a good attitude, a pleasant approach. That does wonders. I mean, Mother Teresa, she would not let her nuns work for the day if they were in a bad mood. She would just say, you're not going to be involved in this work right now. You need to go before the Blessed Sacrament. You need to get things together because you can't serve people that way. And we need to have the right attitude.
Maria, you brought up a really good point just a moment ago, and that is that how this generation sees motherhood. And I think that with television and movies, streaming services, there are more things being pushed out to us that complain about mothers or portray mothers, working women in general, as being overburdened and oppressed. And we are victims that we must somehow overcome. And part of that is we need to postpone having children. Or we do not respect children or babies or life in that way. And I hadn't really thought of it until you were talking. And I can see it in a lot of the mainstream entertainment. How many times are we lying to these teens that you cannot have it all if you don't? I can't say this right. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
How many times is the message being promoted that if you have a child, it will derail your career and your life? And that is a falsehood.
It is. I love those pictures that I see all the time of these college graduates with the baby in their arms.
Yes.
That's remarkable. And there's actually a secular book out now called Love Mom, and it profiles different mothers and their experiences. And it talks about the doctor who wrote the book, Dr. Sapphire. She actually became pregnant at a very young age. I think she was a teenager, and she chose life. She worked really hard, but she got through college and medical school and became a great renowned doctor. And she did it with a baby. So we need to push those narratives aside that say that you can't do this. We need to rally support for women so that they feel empowered, so that they can achieve all their dreams. It's a balancing act, and sometimes you have to do things sequentially. You can't do everything at once. but you can get it done. I mean, I had no idea that after I had a child that I would become an author. I mean, that wasn't really in my mindset, but it happened, and it was the fulfillment of a dream. So we need to change those narratives, and one of the ways we can do that is if we have a child who shows talent in writing or loves the theater, loves drama, encourage them, because there is a whole network of people now involved in faith-based programming, like the people who put on The Chosen and put on all these other faith-based films. We need to make those box office hits, and they have been in a lot of cases. So we can't discourage our children from following their God-given dreams, which may lead to better material in terms of entertainment on various platforms.
To give a little positive for this upcoming generation, because I don't want to make them, I don't want to, discourage them in any way. I guess it was 2020 was the last time I went to the Texas Rally for Life. I took she was middle school at the time, and she wanted to go. It was actually her request that we go, and we rode the bus to Austin, and we went. And the thing that was so surprising to both her and I, but she voiced it first, was how young the crowd was.
Mm-hmm.
That I really thought it would be older. I really thought that the Rally for Life would mostly be retirees, and it wasn't. It was mostly people in their 20s.
Yes.
And it was, and then children too. It was so encouraging to see young people not just being pro-life and knowing that babies and life is important, but to take the time out of their day, out of their Saturday, and to go down there. And it was important enough to them to go down there, walk through the streets of Austin and attend the rally. So I just want to say that as a positive note. Now, I haven't been since the pandemic and all of that, but it was so eye-opening and so lovely.
Yes, and if you go to the March for Life in Washington, D.C., the vast majority of the marchers are high school or college students every single year in and year out. That's just a fact. And it's very encouraging that there are so many young people who've grown up in this pro-abortion culture, and yet they are eager to fight for life, and in a very compassionate, loving fashion. It's truly remarkable.
Wow, Maria, this has been eye-opening and so important to talk about. And I want to thank you for coming on and talking to us about it.
Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure. It's always a blast listening to the two of you. So I'm so grateful for this time together.
So now, Maria, before we go, we always ask our guests if they have a sister, and if they do, can they share a story about them?
Well, I do have a sister, and I think my favorite story is actually when I was 2 years old, and I was at that time an only child, and I was at my grandma Hazel's house, and I was waiting for my sister to arrive. And what I did not know was that she was a preemie, and she was in the NICU, and it was touch and go as far as her life was concerned. And my parents really didn't know what was going to happen to her. But as a 2-year-old, I had faith, and I couldn't wait to see her. And then when she got there, I was asking, well, when's she going to be big enough for me to play with? And she just was my little buddy from the get-go. We had adventures together, and she wrote her own play about our family, and she was going to call it Monsters in My Ice Cream. And I said, no, we're Italian. Call it Monsters in My Spumoni. So that's what she did. And she produced it at her college, and I got to play myself in it. So I have a wonderful sister. I've been very blessed, and I can't imagine life without her.
Aw, I love that.
I was just thinking, starring Maria as herself.
Yeah. Well, my name in the show, she did change the names in the show. My name in the show was Rachel, but it was me.
And then, Maria, one final question. Who is your go-to saint these days? Who's out there walking with you on this journey right now?
My go-to saint, is, was, and always will be the Blessed Mother. And actually, under her title of Our Lady Undoer of Knots, because
Oh.
I get myself into so many knots nowadays, and it takes a lot to get to get it all unraveled. So I go to the Blessed Mother every week, and I say, "Please unravel these knots in my life." And she goes through, and she takes care of them one by one, and she's the best friend I could possibly have.
Oh, I love
I
that.
love that.
Yep.
So, Maria, do you want to share with our listeners where they can find you?
Sure. You can find me on my website, Maria V, as in Victory, Gallagher, www.mariavgallagher.com. Or you can go to Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation website at paprolife.org.
All right. And then we will put those links in the show notes so people don't have to look too far. If you're listening, just go back into the description of the show, scroll down towards the bottom, and they'll be in there right there for you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, we're so glad that you came, that you were available, that you were able to come on today. It's been lovely to catch up. We, Shelly and I had touched on this topic back last year, our episode 21. We called it Supporting Pregnant Women. And so this is, I hope this will be a more frequent thread for us as we
That'd be great.
kind of get back involved in the
Yeah.
pro-life movement.
Yeah, that would be terrific.
Thank you, dear listener, for being with us today. And we hope that you enjoyed this topic and that you will take Maria's suggestions and find ways to be involved in the pro-life movement and also to pray for all pregnant women and their children. We hope that you'll be back next week with us. And as always, subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
It was a pleasure. It really was.